very much, ladies and gentlemen. If I can ask you now to take your seats as we get into today's program, that's the perfect way to set the tone for today's agenda, where, of course, we are going to be laying out some national ambition, right? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to day 2 of the NAACAM Show 2025. A special welcome, as I say, to our distinguished guests joining us this morning. It's an absolute privilege to have you in the room and a part of the conversations that are going to be happening today. It's nice to see that we've managed to maintain a full house presence and this on day 2 of the NAACAM show. And I don't think it's necessary, ladies and gentlemen, for me to labor the various points that emerged out of yesterday's discussions, right? I think each of the speakers and the moderators, along with their panelists, managing to interrogate each of those topics pretty comprehensively, extracting quite a bit of engagement from you, the audience, as well. And it certainly got a lot of conversations going in the corridors as well. So that was exactly what we set out to do, and glad to see that we achieved that, right? There seems to be, and well, dare I say, there is a broad recognition and a consensus emerging that action needs to happen, that we need to start seeing more effective implementation of policies in play to get the sector of the economy growing and going, right? Ladies and gentlemen, the African proverb, however, is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that is dawning, right? Albeit at a very slow pace, that players within this entire ecosystem that we've been talking about need to work collaboratively. The siloed approach is simply not going to cut it anymore. So the approach that we come in at this with is going to be key to sustaining long-term success. That said, collaboration means coordination between the various stakeholders that are a part of this ecosystem, and that calls for the right frameworks needing to be put in place to support the endeavor and keeping everybody on the same track. Now, the South African Automotive Master Plan, which of course extends to 2035, provides a clear roadmap on how we actually get there for the sector's growth, right? With a focus on expanding into African markets, and I know that that was a point that was clearly emphasized yesterday, but it comes hand in hand with embracing new technologies as well. Having said all of that, given the evolving landscape that we are looking at, some saying that perhaps it is time to review that policy framework to make sure that it remains aligned to the shifts that are in play. The objectives may very well be clear, but elements of the policy that need to facilitate growth need to be made robust. They need to we need to make sure and ensure that they are still effective and still relevant in the current time. So I'm going to leave that with you to think about as we get into today's program with a governmental lineup of speakers. But first, for a more official welcome to today's proceedings, please can I call up Rene Mutilal. He's, of course, CEO of NAACAM.
Deputy President, Honorable Paul Mashatile, Honorable Stella Ndabeni Abrahams, Minister, Department of Small Business, Honorable Dean McPherson, Minister, Public Works and Infrastructure, Eastern Cape Premier, Lubabalo Oscar Abuyane, MEC of Eastern Cape, Dediat Nonkobela Peters, Nelson Mandela Bay Metro Executive Mayor Babalwa Lobishe, NAACAM President Ugo Frigerio and Vice Presidents Andrea Moz, Jacques Kotso, Arthur Mtombeni, and the NEC of NAACAM, AIDC EC CEO Thabo Shengani and Board Chair Pumzile Zitumane, AITF CEO Jabulani Selomani, CEOs and executive heads of state-owned entities and agencies, friends of the sector, CEOs, and executive heads of OEMs and component manufacturers and other captains of industry here. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and a warm welcome back to the second day of the NAACAM Show 2025, hosted in partnership with the AIDC Eastern Cape for the first time here in the Eastern Cape, and particularly the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, a region with automotive manufacturing in its DNA. Yesterday, we unpacked the numbers, trends, and strategies shaping our sector. Today, as we host our country's leadership, Deputy President, we continue to explore not just the current performance of South Africa's automotive industry, but its potential to be more inclusive, resilient, and globally competitive as a manufacturing hub, all of which is so crucial at a time when South Africa is chairing the G20 amidst changing and challenging world trade and economic dynamics. Deputy President, if you'll allow me to paint a picture of what you will find here today. The automotive industry is a symphony of production efficiency, technical quality, and futuristic innovation. The OEM brands or vehicle assemblers are the rock stars, often taking center stage when one thinks of the word automotive. But we know that no concert, no matter how famous the artist, happens without a multitude of experienced professionals behind the scenes. Here today, you will interact with the many sound engineers, lighting crews, makeup artists, and stage managers who ensure the driving experience is unforgettable. Without these skilled and often unseen professionals, the show won't go on. In our context, these are the companies producing the engine, transmission, and braking systems, wiring harnesses, body panels, interior trim, precision machined steel and aluminum parts, emission and thermal management systems, tires, batteries, and electronics, amongst others. I could go on. All of these ensure that your vehicles are safe, functional, comfortable, and efficient. South Africa's automotive sector contributes almost 23% to the country's manufactured output and more than 5% to its GDP. It anchors South Africa's industrial base by providing skilled jobs, stimulating innovation, and enabling raw material beneficiation. Component companies alone employ more than 85,000 people directly and supports hundreds of thousands more in vehicle assembly, upstream raw materials, logistics, tooling, maintenance, and downstream retail and aftermarket services. Last year, component exports reached nearly 64 billion, with our top markets spanning Europe, Asia, and North America. Even with the global trade disruptions and tariff challenges brought about by the Trump administration, our sector continues to prove its adaptability and resilience in the face of these challenges. Premier, just as a concert tour brings together talent from multiple locations, the South African Autos value chain spans the African continent. Be impressed by the companies in your region already producing high-tech components going into OEM plants across the country, and experience the economic cohesion of regional value chains of seating, glass, and electric subcomponents sourced in our neighboring partners Lesotho and Botswana, further finished here in South African component factories, and finally assembled onto vehicles who make their way onto the export markets. Minister Ndabeni Abrahams, transformation and economic diversification are sectoral imperatives. At this show alone, we have 26 black-owned SMMEs that will be found exhibiting, proving that quality, innovation, and competitiveness are not confined to legacy firms. The localization agenda in our sector remains a critical lever. Achieving 60% local content in line with the SA Autos Master Plan target could unlock billions in new production and procurement opportunities, be a launch pad for SMMEs and emerging black-owned industrialists, create thousands of skilled jobs, and reduce our exposure to volatile currency and logistics cost. The automotive concert of the future is changing, shifting to electric, connected, autonomous, and green mobility. Component firms in South Africa are already producing parts for new energy vehicles, or any Vs destined for Europe and Asia, some of which you'll see today. Honored guests, when you interact with the component sector today, imagine you are backstage, engaged with the sound engineers and lightning crews of the automotive sector. Their craft, ingenuity, and persistence is what makes the South African automotive story world-class. The NAACAM show is about celebrating these unsung heroes, building stronger supply chains, and giving the ordinary South African many avenues to be part of this exceptional automotive performance. Enjoy your experience at the NAACAM show, and we appreciate your participation. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for that, Renee. And of course, each of the voices, ladies and gentlemen, that we are going to be hearing from during the course of this morning is going to be giving us a better sense of the plans that are being put in place to support and get the sector of the economy moving, support what is a very ambitious agenda, right? But more specifically, give us a better sense of what is being done at this point to ensure that the plans are effectively not only supported, but executed on as well. There is, of course, work being done by the AIDC Eastern Cape, which is, of course, a provincial government-funded agency aiming to enhance the overall global competitiveness of the sector. So I'd like to, at this point, invite to the stage now Phumzile Zitumani, chairperson of the Automotive Industry Development Center of the Eastern Cape. And he's going to be giving us better insight, like I say, on the support the agency is currently offering the sector.
Good morning to you, Program Director. Let me just jump onto the safe side and say and good morning to everyone in the room. And after having said that, allow me, Program Director, to extend special greetings and welcoming to the following. We normally start with the host, Executive Mayor, Ms. Councillor Babalwa Lubishe, the Deputy President of our country, Honorable Paul Mashatile, the Premier of the Eastern Cape, Honorable Oscar Mabuyane, the Minister of Small Business Development, Ms. Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, the Minister of Public Works, Honorable Akfasen, MEC for the Department of Economic Development, Environmental Affairs, Tourism, and Tourism, Ms. Nkubela Kitas, Head of Department of the DIT, same department that I've just mentioned, Ms. Miki Mama, President and the Board of NAACAM, President and the Board of NAMSA, CEO Renee Motilal, the gentleman who has just been here, and management of NAACAM, Board of AIDC Eastern Cape, and other boards of SOEs in the Eastern Cape and throughout the country. CEO of AIDC Eastern Cape, Mr. Shengane, and management of AIDC. Captains of industry, CEOs of all SOEs, leaders of the organized labor, all the industry players, all government officials. A special thanks also goes to the steering committee that made this occasion to happen. The exhibitors, members of the media, and if I've forgotten your name, I now call you upon those who are very special as well, ladies and gentlemen. Once more, good morning and warm welcome to Day 2 of NAACAM Show 2025. After having experienced a day of high-level discussions, advice and solutions towards assisting our automotive suppliers in South Africa, and of course, Eastern Cape in particular. On behalf of AIDC Eastern Cape and the Eastern Cape government, we are once more eternally grateful to NAACAM board, CEO and his executive team for deciding to have this NAACAM Show 2025 in our beautiful province of the Eastern Cape. I sincerely hope that those who undertook site visits of our beautiful province enjoyed themselves on Tuesday, and they can confirm that Eastern Cape is not just a beautiful or tourist destination, but also a place to live, a place to play, and of course, invest as well. This gathering is profound for this province, whose economy is relying largely on the automotive sector and its value chain. It is taking place at a time when the whole world is experiencing fundamental shifts on how business is conducted, a period of extreme contradictions and unpredictability, a period of massive job losses in our country and our province in particular. There are massive shifts in how trade is conducted globally. Gone are the days of long-term trade agreements between countries. Clearly, something fundamental must be done. And it must be done through a partnership between government, solutions are needed quickly. Mine is to welcome you to Day 2 of the NAACAM Show 2025, an event meant to create a platform of networking, discussing automotive policy issues, discussing global challenges, and finally, solve challenges, both locally and internationally. The presence of our political leadership in this event from the Eastern Cape, led by Premier Oscar Mabuyane and his MECs, is a clear demonstration of the support our provincial government is putting behind the automotive sector, especially component suppliers, who are major job creators themselves in our province. Once more, I wish to specifically thank all of you for participating in this historic event for the Eastern Cape. Thank you, Renee, and the President and the Board of NAACAM for once more deciding to have this event in this province. I also wish to thank the AITC Board and management for the tireless work they continue to do to advance the growth of the automotive sector in the province. Lastly, thank all of you for your active participation and attendance, and a warm, if you have never heard this, Gabecha welcome to all of you. Thank you very much. Happy Women's Month to all women who are here and in the automotive sector. Also, thank you.
Thank you so much, Phumzile, for that. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, the AIDC Eastern Cape has this firm focus, and with that firm focus on getting the automotive industry to play a leading role in the economy, works hand in hand with government. It's got to, right? And a lot of the conversations that they do have with government focuses on policy prioritization to strengthen what is effectively the backbone of the Eastern Cape. So I think that needing to be underlined from what Phumzile highlighted today. So on that note, it is my privilege this morning to welcome to the podium now Premier of the Eastern Cape Province, Oscar Mabuyane, to share his perspective on where things are, but more importantly, give us a sense of the extent to which these engagements are having a bearing. Thanks so much, Premier.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Your Worship, the Executive Mayor of the Nelson Mandela Metro, Councillor Lobishe, our guest of honor, His Excellency, the Deputy President of our Republic, President Paul Mashatile, the ministers of our government, Minister Stella Ndabeni, Small Business Development, and Dean McPherson, Public Works and Infrastructure. I hope that I'm not leaving any other minister. Outside, our member of the Executive Council, Honorable Nkobela Peters, the President of NAACAM, Ugo Frigerio, the Captains of Industry, Chairpersons of Boards, including the AIDC Eastern Cape, CEOs and government officials in attendance, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Remain, indeed, as Mandela once said, it always seems impossible until it is done. I know when the idea of hosting this event in Eastern Cape, it came as a really far-fetched idea that appeared to be legally very impossible. I'm so happy that you managed, working with AIDC Eastern Cape, to pull it through. Congratulations to NAACAM team. For that, I'm looking forward to NAMSA, as you also made a commitment. You have already been welcomed to this province, the home of legends, and I won't bore you much about that again, but I must tell you that as a province, we are indeed honored to host this very important 2025 edition of NAACAM Show. Sikunyanga yomama ke inyanga yokubulela igalelo labo kumzabalazo wenkululeko negalelo labo ekwakhiweni kwelizwe loMzantsi Afrika esiphila kulo. Allow me therefore to say malibongwe igama lamakhosikazi. I know, Mamchawe, you are holding the fort, and I'm quite happy that you are in charge, and all those men, they can listen to you on what direction must we take. My fellow delegates, the automotive sector is still a male-dominated sector. However, in the past few years, we have seen the rise in the numbers of women in the shops floor of our OEMs and our component suppliers. Even exciting for me is the affirmation of women into leadership position in the automotive sector. I can mention Umam Chawe, as I've said, the head of VW Africa Group. I can mention Ms. Jonia Mkonto, a senior manager in marketing planning at Toyota. I've seen the boss from Toyota here. Ms. Ntabiseng Mutsipe, head of corporate relations and communication at Nissan Africa. Ms. Shivani Singh, the commercial director of NAACAM, and Marja Smith, senior manager at Ford. This is quite commendable for the transformation of the sector, and we are calling for more women presentation in boards, executive management, and ownership of component supplier. We have done that. We are more than 100 years in this sector. To just mention the few women in the sector, it tells you a lot about the transformation. And I think up until we all understand the importance of mainstreaming and bringing women on board, and this country can definitely go somewhere. We can really push hard on our development trajectory. Program Director, we host this important NAACAM show as a day after States SA released the second quarter of labor force survey results. The results show that the Eastern Cape recorded a significant employment increase of 89,000 jobs, second to Gauteng at 95,000. Overall jobs gains were recorded in the following sectors: trade, private household, construction, and agriculture. I think you can see that the auto sector is not featuring there. I'm highlighting this to draw the attention of delegates to this NAACAM show, to the fact that the manufacturing sector lost jobs in the second quarter. My point is that the automotive sector is the anchor of our manufacturing sector value chain, and the first commitment we make as government is to do all in our power to protect this sector, to avoid jobs bloodbath. I've been told that delegates in this NAACAM show have raised concern for the need for Transnet and ESCOM to do more improving their efficiency, facilities and economic infrastructure to enable manufacturing, logistics, and export. It is my responsibility to respond to such genuine concern from the auto sector. We want to make a special plea to delegates at this show not to despair considering the current challenges faced by the auto sector. We are resilient people and we will put our heads together. We can overcome any obstacle. I'm quite agreeing with you that this is time for action. We didn't come here to mourn 30% tariffs and all that. We're here to bring our heads together, to find solutions to the problems that we are encountering. So definitely I agree, Program Director, that procrastination is the thief of time. We might have been delaying and we just can't afford to be sluggish anymore, particularly on the auto sector. We're grappling with this, with the introduction of the transition from the combustion engines to EVs and all that, and in the middle of that, boom, President Trump with this, and we are all running around like headless chicken. So I think this is time for us to sit here and say we're in Africa. We've got a market in Africa. More than 1.5 billion people are residing in this continent. What else can we do? How must we work together as governments to improve the infrastructure to ensure effective logistics in our continent, as well as in other continents, Asia and South America, etc., etc. In recent times, colleagues, we have worked together as government and business to deal with the challenge of load shedding, which affected many businesses in the auto sector. Unfortunately, Deputy President, it's only businesses in Eastern Cape that were so affected by the load shedding. Only companies here that were load shedded because of the challenges that we have. And we've worked together to still survive that particular challenge. I'm quite happy that Minister Ramakgopa is actually handling this situation very well, and there's a huge, remarkable progress. Government has made impactful intervention at ESCOM as a result. ESCOM continues to implement its comprehensive recovery plan aimed at addressing the root causes of load shedding with targeted focus on people, plant, and processes. Between April 2024 and March 2025, electricity was available at 96% of the time, up from just 9.9% the previous year. ESCOM's generation recovery plan was played a central role in these improvements. The recovery plan has yielded an injection of over 2,500 megawatts additional generation capacity to the national grid from the December 2024 until July 2025, ensuring greater grid stability. An additional 930 megawatts is expected to be returned from Quebec Unit 1 and August. I was worried when it was introduced that they are moving with the nuclear plant. So I thought, what's happening with the Tainspan? And I called everyone. I called the CEO of ESCOM, I called Minister, and then they said, no, we're coming. Still in the process, because we've been believing that we are more than ready with that nuclear plant here in Jeffreys Bay. So the Tainspan is one of those sites that must be able to help us to stabilize this more. I wish to inform delegates at this NAACAM show and manufacturing businesses in our province that ESCOM is planning to roll out high-level scope projects in the Eastern Cape with an investment value of 2.5 billion between 2025 and 2030 to ensure energy security for industries and households. The upgrading of infrastructure, including the installation of 500 megavolt ampers transformers at Grassreach, the DISA Delphi substation, with service Nelson Mandela Metro Industry, better and support additional IPP connection capacity. The construction of 40-kilometer, 400 kilovolts line between Neptune and Pembroke substation will strengthen energy supply for industries in the Buffalo City Metro. We welcome ESCOM's active partnership aimed at offering professional engineering services to the municipalities and industries. This will make the economy to grow and make us competitive in the continent and in the world. Transnet, on its part, is key for the automotive sector with respect to export logistics by rail and our ports. We are working with Transnet to ensure that investment are made in their infrastructure in the province and to enable economic growth. The berth capacity of the automotive terminal in the port of East London has been increased to allow new generation vessels to berth in the port. This milestone is aligned with the port's growth strategy and refurbishing and developing port infrastructure to accommodate intake of larger vessels as part of improving servicing and the automotive sector, with Mercedes-Benz South Africa as one of the key clients. I've seen Mercedes-Benz here as well. Hi, Abby. Are you well? Okay, good. Transnet also leads the project Ukuvuselela, which is a high-capacity rail corridor for auto volumes from Gauteng to the Eastern Cape province. For this project, government wants to leverage private sector investment, experience, and expertise to facilitate the rail transportation of a minimum of 150,000 fully built units per annum through the South Corridor to the Port Elizabeth by the year 2028. I must indicate, Mr. Deputy President, I'm not happy about the progress here. It's one of those catalytic projects that we should have done. It's almost 7 years. We are running around circles on this. Ford made a commitment of 15 billion investment. It was linked into this. And as government, we've been towing and throwing around this particular project. It's now about 7 billion project, and then we need it. We need it. We need to connect Eastern Cape to the economic hub of this country. It's important that we get this one right as soon as possible. A team from Transnet is attending this NAACAM, so I'm quite happy that the group CEO was here herself yesterday, and I know there's still a team that is here to make sure that all the discussions that are taking place here are not going to fall in deaf ears. Program Director, I'm told this is the 4th edition of the NAACAM show, and we are glad it has finally come to our province because we are home of the automotive industry in South Africa. We say so because the first assembly plant in South Africa was established by Ford Motor Company here in Gqeberha in 1924, marking the start of local vehicle assembly. 2 years later, General Motors followed suit by establishing their own assembly plant here in Gqeberha. It's unfortunate that now General Motors is no longer here. The 1940 saw the establishment of 2 more assembly plants in our province, one for Volkswagen in Kariega, and the other for Mercedes-Benz South Africa in East London. All these firms have become part of our lives in the Eastern Cape, and therefore any conversation about the current challenges and future of the auto sector must have an Eastern Cape voice. When we engage ministers, Deputy President, I know one day I had a call with Minister of Finance talking about this issue on how we must put more impetus on the transition and the policy development. And he said, but it looks like you are ahead of the curve. And I said, yeah, because I just can't afford to have this being negatively impacted, because this is life, is culture, is heritage in the Eastern Cape as well as for South Africa. We are hopeful this won't be the last time we host the NAACAM show. In October, we'll also host the SA Auto Week here, as I've indicated, and I'm quite pleased that, again, you guys, you have actually heeded our call and our plea. You coming this. Eastern Cape can host conferences, international conferences. We need more. I think the chairperson of AIDC board was speaking about how beautiful this province is. So tourists must also able to come. And I was happy, Deputy President, on my way here yesterday, that I passed by Bulembu and I saw 777 Boeing landing at Bulembu Airport from UAE. And I was just asking myself, why? And they've told me at some point that in any developing country, you can't have such a kind of an airport lying fallow like that. It's a hidden gem. So that's the airport, it's what you need for everything else. If you look at big military aircrafts from UAE that are landing, preparing for the visit of their president. And I was told that the Royal Highness, the president, is willing to come to Eastern Cape twice a year. That's a big economy, and we should be strengthening that relationship. Please don't insult him again, guys. Please, tone down, tone down. Last time it was not a good time. We had worked very hard to get him back again. He's a resident here, he's a citizen, he's owning a farm here. So he must come back at any given time he wants to. Please be warm to people in Rwanda, Ziabuku. Deputy President, the NAACAM show has established itself as the premier platform for the automotive sector value chain, bringing together leaders from components manufacturing, vehicle assembly, labor, government, and other critical stakeholders. This is a platform that advances a collective agenda of competitive, transformed, and thriving automotive component base in South Africa. This gathering is not just a meeting of minds, it is a call to action, as the program director reminded us, a call to find solutions to strengthen the current automotive component manufacturing industry and to create a common future for the automotive sector. The Eastern Cape remains a critical hub for the automotive manufacturing in Africa, with 4 light vehicle original equipment manufacturers, a dense component supplier base, about 42% of them located in our province. The component manufacturing industry displayed a great deal of recovery since COVID, both on production, export, and job creation. Jobs created by the components manufacturers remained steady at about 80,000 nationally for the past 10 years, with about 35,000 of those in the Eastern Cape. The level of localization still hovers around at 39% versus the 60% that is targeted to be achieved by South Africa's Automotive Industry Master Plan by 2035. This suggests a lot still needs to be done, Honorable Minister Ndabeni, to attract investments and support manufacturing by Tier 2 and Tier 3. This low level of localization is an indicator of a sector that is not growing, resulting in a lack of shock absorbers when the global sector experiences challenges, like we are having in the recent times. This means collectively we must invest on research and development to improve skills of our people, because the auto sector is now using new technologies such as artificial intelligence and robotics. The auto sector is also transforming to EVs and hybrid vehicles production. We must not be left behind. The automotive industry remains an export-oriented one, which is exposed to major geopolitical risks such as the retrenchments by Goodyear in 2025 and Mercedes in 2024. Global rationalization by these companies results in major job losses locally, as we are experiencing with several other companies in the value chain that have closed shop in our province with massive job losses. Fellow delegates, we are experiencing unpredictable and trade relationship with recent times that are proving to be quite devastating for the current structure of doing business in our country. The South Africa-US trade relations are proving to all of us that depending too much on one export market is not good for the business continuity in our country. Time to diversify is now. Our call has proposed 40,000 vehicle and components entry into the US all duty free. These proposals have been still under negotiation, including the 30% tariff imposed on South African products. On the 8th August 2025, the media reported that local-based company called Gendermark lost $750 million worth of contracts because of the 30% tariffs by the US administration. This threatens the livelihood of the many of the company's 500 employees and 3,000 workers in its local supply chain, along with impacting local factories that are on its goods. While the 30% tariffs have already been a heavy blow to many companies, the US administration has also threatened to add a further 10% to goods from BRICS nation in the future. This is an example of many companies that are going through the same issues. Minister Tau and Minister Lamula have proposed the number of intervention packages, and they've spoken about these in a number of press briefings. That includes the export support desk to assist our companies and also assist our companies to absorb tariffs to protect jobs, productive capacity, but also leveraging on the localization support fund to support the competitiveness, etc., etc. These measures are sound, and we are thankful that national government has swiftly made them available. Our province intends localizing these support measures to that local companies that have an access to these measures. We will therefore be establishing the point of contact at the AIDC Eastern Cape to assist companies to access this support. We are hoping this will create a smooth support structure for companies that would be impacted by the tariffs in the short term whilst buying the South Africa negotiating time to negotiate a better deal. With those few words, Honourable President and all guests, let this NAACAM show be rich in discussion and proposing workable solutions for the future of the automotive sector. We definitely need to do much better, to be much more better and agile as government to make sure that the conditions is quite conducive for our investors to invest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Premier. And if I can ask you to remain on stage, please, to accept a small token of appreciation for taking the time to be with us today from NAACAM. So I'll hand over. There we go. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, as much as this is big business, it is the small businesses that are the heartbeat of the South African economy, right? The engine for driving economic growth and for job creation as well. So if we are really going to be turning the fortunes of our economy around, a collective energy certainly needs to be put towards and directed towards building and growing a resilient and sustainable small business sector within this ecosystem. The Department of Small Business Development under Minister Ndabeni Abrahams has emphasized the need to support these businesses through various initiatives, all aiming to not only bring more of them into the fray, but to expand production capacity as well and unlock access to markets, for these businesses to gain the opportunity and to be able to grow as well. The Minister joins us this morning, and she is hopefully going to be giving us more insight into some of the programs that her department has in place. So, Minister, if I can welcome you up.
Thank you so much, Director of the Program. Deputy President, walking up on stage is indeed a long walk. I do hope that it is a long walk to freedom. Allow me to acknowledge the keynote speaker of the day, whom will be introduced to yourselves, and I'm not going to spoil the fun. My colleague, Minister Dean McPherson, the Premier of our beautiful province, the MEC responsible for economic development, whom you already know. Those that don't know her, Inkosazana Unonkobela Peters, the Executive Mayor of our beautiful metro here in the Eastern Cape and on this side, Ms. Bababla Lobishe, the Chairperson of the AIDC, Uputpumzile, hello Putwam, the President of NAACAM, Ugo Frigerio, the Executive Director of NAACAM, representatives from the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, representative from the AIDC, esteemed leaders from the OEMs, MSME founders and entrepreneurs in large, colleagues and partners in the automotive ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Right, it's a long walk, right? Even on the protocols. I must indicate that it gives me a great pleasure to join you this morning in this important show that you had decided to host as NAACAM. As other speakers that came before me have indicated, this platform remains a beacon of progress and potential for the automotive component sector in our country. We know that you bring in all leaders from the industry, entrepreneurs, policymakers, and innovators who share a common vision to transform, localize, and grow our domestic value chains, which is very critical that we must invest in. I'm advised that since the launch in 2017, The show has grown into South Africa's premier platform for showcasing capabilities within the automotive component sector. With each edition, it has sharpened its focus on transformation, localization, and industrial competitiveness in line with the objectives of the South African Automotive Master Plan 2035, as led by the Department of Trade, Industry, and Competition. I must say that the decision to host this year's edition in Nelson Mandela Bay is both symbolic and strategic. Now, as a proud daughter of this beautiful province, I'm deeply encouraged to see our province taking its rightful place at the forefront of automotive sector transformation. This province, the Eastern Cape, has long served as the backbone of this industry. It is the home to 3 leading OEMs, as the Premier mentioned, your Volkswagen, Isuzu, and Mercedes-Benz, as well as more than 120 component suppliers. This province boasts a strong manufacturing base, a skilled workforce, and well-developed logistics infrastructure. So this province has everything that it needs to advance in the sector that we're talking about. We meet here, as the other colleagues have mentioned, whilst the global economy faces strong headwinds that are brought about what you know, but mainly the new shifts towards unilateralism and protectionism. We know that the ministers, led by the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, have already outlined the incentives that we are bringing as government, not only to cushion the businesses, but also to cushion the jobs that may be lost if government is not paying attention. And this is why it is important that we must really put our heads together in finding a solution, in ensuring that those that are leaving are replaced. And therefore, we make sure that we look for new markets, because it is important to do so. This sector is also undergoing its own transformation, as driven by technology and decarbonization. Failure to position ourselves strategically and reprioritize aspects of the South African Automotive Master Plan could see us failing behind. And we have a commitment to leave no one behind. This is why we can't be apologetic about technology consumption, but not only that, including innovation that must be driven to transform the sector and benefit the entrepreneurs of our country, so that we don't just become consumers of the economy, but we become drivers of the economy that we're talking about. And this is something all of us need to galvanize around, coming together, promoting and supporting new innovations in order to make sure that we tap into the new economies. We know we need to tweak our model. Rebates on imports have improved the competitiveness of OEMs, but have not enabled the development of local supplier development capabilities. We haven't built the necessary capabilities in design and innovation and in specialized components. Decarbonization presents huge opportunities, leveraging our natural resources for biocomposites and battery production, and these are the opportunities that we must be prepared to exploit. And in this sense, this show is more than an industry exhibition. It is a platform to benchmark where we are as component suppliers and what we need to do collectively as government, the OEMs, and representative bodies like NAACAM to position ourselves in this rapidly changing industry. The overall competitiveness of the South African automotive sector depends on the extent to which we can master vertical integration across the value chain. Shared economic infrastructure like automotive supplier parks and SEZs have played an enabling role in promoting such integration, as have industry clusters. We've noted the proven success of the Durban Automotive Cluster and need to see how we can optimize the Eastern Cape Automotive Industry Forum. Our department is deeply committed to the inclusion of SMEs in all economic sectors, the automotive included. The reality is, without deep transformation, the sector will not meet the inclusive growth targets set out in the South African Automotive Master Plan. We have our MSME-focused localization policy as the department, which guides markets. We work with corporates to open up opportunities in their supply chains. In partnership with the AIDC and the ILO, we completed a detailed feasibility study for the establishment of a Gauteng-based automotive cluster. The study confirmed that such a cluster is not only feasible, but strategically necessary to address coordination gaps, improve supplier readiness, and deepen SME integration in the value chain, especially the production of high-quality components by small, medium enterprises. In addition, as the department, through our entity SITFA, we are leveraging strategic partnerships to support MSMEs through some interventions, working with the Automotive Industry Transformation Fund, and our MOU clearly articulates what needs to be done towards supporting 20 Black-owned MSMEs, providing finance, providing training and development initiatives, and of course, market access programs. The second one is the partnership with the Tshwane Automotive SEZ, where we are building a partnership to establish a dedicated incubator and deliver joint infrastructure, skills, and market access programs. The last one is the AIDC incubators, which we continue to support incubation hubs to build enterprise capacity and readiness. And all of this is made to ensure that we are inclusive and we are integrating small players into the ecosystem for them to be able to participate meaningfully and effectively in their own economy. Of course, we do have different instruments, just like the credit guarantees, those that are going to some banks. I will mention those that we have signed up with. ABSA, we have about 150 million rands that is designated for automotive SMMEs for them to be able to get credit guarantee, because banks, they always complain of high risk elements, and that's why we've decided to de-risk for small businesses. But the third thing, Executive Director, there's poor uptake of that money. Out of the 150 million rands that I'm talking about, only 10 million rands have been utilized. And when we provide these instruments, it's to cushion entrepreneurs to be able to enter into or penetrate the value chains that they're not able to provide. We do know that it is difficult to access finances in our country. That's why we step in, because development needs financing. We do provide direct lending, microfinance, and we have our program TRAP, which is the Township and Rural Enterprise Program, the Youth Fund that I recently announced during our budget vote, and the Women's Fund, in order to address the gaps from those vulnerable groups of our country that continue to be excluded. This is why we are targeted to say there's these specific sectors wherein we see opportunities, and we also note that there isn't much penetration by the vulnerable groups, and therefore we are working also with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition to give effect to the Fund of Funds as outlined in our funding policy for micro, small and medium enterprises, which is what is known as the Transformation Fund, as announced by Minister Pakstow. And I would really like to urge all of you here, if we really want to give effect to what our Constitution says in terms of promoting for trade and ensuring that we give access to participation in the economy to everyone, we've got to support the Transformation Fund. That is why the Minister is busy going throughout the country as we continue to engage with different stakeholders on how to design the fund in order to be able to reach its intended beneficiaries. But at the center of that is the collaboration that we desperately need from the big corporates. We are trying to address the imbalances as the preamble of our Constitution states. And the only way to do that is when we use the legal prescripts that we have to say we have a responsibility, everyone, in order to avoid what we saw in July 2021, KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. We don't want a repeat of that, where people feel like they're excluded in the economy, therefore they must take matters into their hands. That's why governments and the big corporates must step in to assist small businesses. The supplier development and asset assist programs, wherein we provide grants and equipment to enable small suppliers to meet industry needs, is what is going to be advertised soon, and this I announced in terms of the budget during the budget vote speech. We also have what was known as the Seeded Technology Program, where we're providing funding for testing, quality systems, and productivity tools needed for industry alignment. We have the Small Business Export Development Program. As we seek to diversify the markets, Deputy President, it's important that we build in new pipelines, and those pipelines need to be funded. That's why when we hosted our Global Small Enterprise Ministers' engagement that the Deputy President addressed, we had 60 countries that were resolute that they are prepared to work with South Africa in order to open new opportunities as we see that others are being closed. And this is why we've said, if we are going to achieve that, we've got to structure our funds in manners that are assisting them, starting by the establishment of the commercial fund, which must focus on high-growth MSMEs, and that has just been capitalized under 1 billion rands in this MTF. That's why we encourage high-growing or high-scale-up SMMEs to apply for that, because we're responsible for different segments at micro and up to medium level. Please do familiarize yourselves with the new thresholds that we have announced through the National Small Enterprise Act, because they will affect you, both big and small businesses. As we gather here on day 2 of the show, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the robust discussions and engagements that have already taken place as I sought a briefing from the team. From day 1's focus on regional growth, sustainability, global competitiveness, and trade dynamics, it is evident that the sector is thinking critically about how to navigate a fast-changing industrial landscape. And this year, as you all know, South Africa assumed G20 presidency under the theme Solidarity, Equality, and Sustainability. And this is the first of its kind, as you all know, that in the African soil, we are hosting this prestigious event. And we are making sure that we carry the voice of the continent into our G20 deliberations. As the department, we are responsible for the Startup 20 coordination, which is led by Mr. Jahana, the chairperson of ECDC in the Eastern Cape. And we are gathering a number of startups throughout the world to come together, have engagements both on policy and other matters that are affecting them, to say how do we take those and table them at the Leaders Summit in November. We are hoping, Deputy President, that we will get the support of ensuring that we get this engagement group of Startup 20 being formalized in the G20, not a by the way, because you do support the B20. Let the voice of the startups be heard also. We're leaving no one behind, right? Our presence here today reflects our commitment to ensure that MSMEs are not left behind, but are at the forefront of the industry as innovators and entrepreneurs, as small producers, as solution providers, and as global players. There are no big businesses without small businesses. So we're the mother of all of you. You should recognize that. Our program builds on that momentum, offering an opportunity to engage with practical strategies for inclusive growth, from deepening localization and expanding SMME participation to harnessing skills, research and development, and of course, smart technologies. The Premier did say, all these conversations must lead to action. Shouldn't be just us coming together like it's what we did last time, we will come and gather, but it's about the call to action that we must make to ensure that we look at everything that is being done. Firstly, we've got to listen closely to see what more must we do. Do we have the right policy toolbox? What are the regulatory and implementation constraints? What are we doing well? And where do we need to pull our socks up? Because without addressing those or looking at those, this would mean that it's another talk shop. How do we work better with the private sector, as we've taken a decision as the GNU that we're going to strengthen ties with the private sector, because as government, we can't do it alone. Whether we're talking about OEMs or large first tire component manufacturers, as well as other large corporates into the automotive value chain, to optimize the equity equivalent funding and the enterprise supplier development funding to grow the pool of competitive MSME suppliers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is only by working more closely together that we will deepen the supply chain. The more robust and resilient our supply chain, the more competitive our automotive sector becomes. As I close, the department remains firmly committed to building a globally competitive and at the same time locally inclusive automotive sector. We believe those are not mutually exclusive goals but closely intertwined. Through localizing the value chain and building connections into regional value chains and co-creating regional and continental markets, we will ultimately make our automotive industry more globally competitive. Through embracing technology development and the decarbonization agenda and building real productive capabilities in our supply chains, we will find our way through the current headwinds that we face and come out stronger, because in our own veins run the blood that ran through Winnie Madikizela's veins. We are conquerors. Thank you, Program Director.
Minister, if I could ask you to hang back as well to accept a little gift from NAACAM this morning. What a gentleman. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, it's not hard to have all that's been said up to this point breed a level of optimism, right? But if I'm to be bold, it's also not hard to understand why a lot of this optimism comes with its fair share of skepticism as well. Minister highlighting this point very much. South Africa isn't short of ideas. It certainly isn't short of being able to take those ideas and translate them into blueprints, formulating the right plans. But despite the guidelines that could be used to move our growth trajectory in the right direction, the execution, the practical implementation of it all is where South Africa seems to be falling short. And that really throwing the spotlight on the right mechanisms needing to be put in place, not only to support the effective implementation, but to ensure that there are robust enough checks and balances being put in place at the same time to account for why, when things don't happen as they should, right? This has certainly become our national story, ladies and gentlemen. It is a story that I think everyone in the room is pretty familiar with. And the hope is that now that we have a greater collaboration coming to the fore, and not only within the government circles and that via the GNU, of course, but also the collaboration that we're seeing between government, business, labor, and civil society, perhaps more than we've ever seen, is going to be putting us on the right track and certainly getting South Africa to where it needs to be in terms of economic transformation, growth, and inclusion as well. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, what an honor it is for me this morning to introduce Deputy President of South Africa, Paul Mashatile. He is with us at the NAACAM Show 2025. So please, can I ask you to give a warm welcome to the Deputy President as he makes his way up to the podium.
You may be seated. When I arrived here this morning, one of the people who came to greet me is Minister McPherson, and he's wearing very colorful clothes. So I admired his gear, and I asked him, why are you not wearing a suit and a tie? He said, no, this is my working clothes. So I was saying to him and the Premier, they reminded me of my son when he was still young at primary school. So I came home. I was the MEC for public works in Gauteng and transport, and I was wearing this hat from the construction site. So I get home, I greet him, and he greets me back, and he looks at me and say, "So you come from work today?" So wearing a suit and a tie, Premier, we may not be working. But thank you very much, Program Director. Thank you so much to you, Ms. Alicia Sekam. Let me start by greeting our host, Executive Mayor of Nelson Mandela Metro, Councillor Babalwa Lubish. Thank you for being such a good host. I want to greet my Premier, Oscar Mabuyane. I've been spending a lot of time in the Eastern Cape. We were together not long ago, I think 3-4 days ago, in some other function. Greetings to our Minister of Small Businesses, Mr. Landabeni, Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Minister Dean McPherson. Let me greet MEC Nonkubelo Peters, our MEC for Department of Economic Development, Environment, Affairs and Tourism. Very big portfolio, indeed. NAACAM President, Ego Frigerio, and all NAACAM Vice Presidents who are present here with us. NAACAM CEO who addressed us this morning, Renai Moitila. AIDC Eastern Cape Board Chairperson, Pumzile Zitumani, also addressed us this morning. AIDC CO, Thabo Shengani. NAMSA President Billy Tom. ITF CO Jabulani Sulumani. All business leaders who are present here with us today, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you, Molweni. We are meeting here today in the month that we remember and honor the sacrifices that the women of South Africa have made over the past 70 years, materializing most significantly through the March of 1956, which changed the political landscape of apartheid South Africa. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to address the first P20 Women's Parliament of the 7th administration, an important event for Parliament, but also for the global women's movement in the year that South Africa chairs the G20 presidency. Women, youth, and other marginalized groups must not be left behind in the transformation process of this sector. And this must be a goal that NAACAM is committed to, in line with the country's overall transformation agenda. South Africa's presidency of the G20 is a significant moment for the continent and the global South. And through its theme, solidarity, equality, and sustainability, also seeks to contribute to the automotive sector by putting on the table relevant discussions that pertain to economic resilience and growth, sustainability and the green transition, and global governance reform, amongst other things. I specifically make mention of this because it is important that as a sector, you are also positioned to enhance the discussions at that level, considering that this is a global industry. Ladies and gentlemen, this session takes place at a time when South Africa's automotive and manufacturing industries are navigating tough times, just as our economy was starting to show signs of recovery. This extraordinary time necessitates collaboration between the government and the private sector to address the growing dependence on imports. We must ensure that we do address this seriously, particularly infrastructural inadequacies, the transition to electric vehicles, and the issue of the 30% tariff increase by the United States of America. I am pleased that the National Association of Automotive Components and Allied Manufacturers, NAACAM, the foremost representative of South Africa's automotive component industry, has convened us at this opportune moment to delineate the path forward for our nation. To that extent, it is admirable that NAACAM invests a lot of resources in improving localization, transformation, and supplier development landscape in South Africa. This comes with appreciation that the automotive industry holds significant potential for shared prosperity through targeted industrial development. This sector is a success story of industrial policy and contributes significantly to the GDP of our country and employment. The automotive sector in South Africa is one of the country's most strategically important and internationally linked industries, accounting for 22.6% of manufacturing output and 5.2% of our country's GDP. Of great significance is that in our fight to increase employment is the automotive sector, which employs approximately 115,000 people in total. The largest share of these employees, over 80% of them, work in the component sector. The industry is export-oriented, globally competitive, and plays a vital role in regional and national industrial development. In 2024, the component sector exported 62.5 billion rands of components. We must never allow the loss of these gains because of external or internal pressures. I say this with concern because the employment levels in the sector have been under strain due to ongoing economic pressures and reduced production volumes. I've also learned that over the past 2 years, NAACAM has recorded 12 company closures, impacting over 4,000 individuals. What is of more concern are the recently released figures by Stats SA, showing that the country's unemployment rate has now climbed to 33.2% in the second quarter of this year, an increase from 32.9% in the previous quarter. This latest figure is a clear indication that the nation's unemployment crisis remains an urgent concern. We need to do more to combat unemployment, which might include improving education and skills to match labor market demands, promoting entrepreneurship and small business and small enterprises, and investing in public employment programs to generate jobs. The government is committed to working with various sectors to create employment and improve the living conditions of our people. The government supports the automotive industry through a combination of investment incentives, improved policy frameworks, and infrastructure development. Key initiatives include the Automotive Investment Scheme, AIS, which offers non-taxable cash grants to encourage investments in new models and components. Additionally, the government supports local productions through tariffs and incentives, aiming to boost employment and strengthen the automotive value chain. The Automotive Industry Development Center, AIDC, also plays a crucial role in skills development, enterprise development, and managing incentive programs. This sector is also guided by the South African Automotive Master Plan 2035, which aims to build a globally competitive and transformed industry. The Automotive Master Plan 2035 goals include growing vehicle productions to 1% of global output. That's about 1.4 million vehicles. Increasing local content to 60%, doubling employment to 224,000 employees, and deepening transformation and value addition with 25% Black-owned involvement at the Tier 2 and Tier 3 component manufacturing level. The Automotive Production Development Program Phase 2 is a policy program intended to support and enable the realization of the objectives of the master plan. As the government, we recognize the industry's significant role and see it as a backbone of our economic growth, promoting industrial development and encouraging innovation. I am of the view that by increasing investment in research and development, we can use the power of technology to improve efficiency and sustainability, ensuring that our products and services stay competitive in the global market. Moreover, by nurturing a culture of collaboration and partnership amongst manufacturers, suppliers, and stakeholders, we can unlock new opportunities for growth and prosperity. This sector, not just in South Africa, but in Africa as a whole, has emerged as a critical area of investment, providing substantial prospects for growth and development. In this context, Program Director, we must not overlook the significance of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, particularly on economic integration and industrialization, which is projected to draw additional international investments into the African automotive industry. Moreover, the free trade agreement has the potential to significantly boost the automotive industry across the continent by reducing trade barriers, fostering regional value chains, and harmonizing regulations. This could lead to increased production, lower costs for consumers, but also ensure a more competitive market. The implementation of this agreement has the potential to lessen African countries' dependency on developed countries for automotive components and completed vehicles by promoting regional value chains and increasing local production. Creating a single continental market for goods and services could potentially lead to increased trade, investment, and job creation in the African continent. However, this does not suggest that we do not need other nations as our trading partners. We believe in diversifying our investments and engaging in trade with several partners. It is for this reason that the Cabinet has adopted a new trade proposal to the United States that aims not just to settle the 30% tariff, but also has ramification for over 130 other trading partners who may reroute their products into the South African market. As Cabinet, we are committed to protecting the economic interests of our country and are forging ahead towards strengthening our economy, therefore dealing with the triple challenge of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Ladies and gentlemen, I must highlight that there will be repercussions felt throughout the entire value chain if we do not reach an amicable trade agreement with the White House. It is probable that South Africa or South African suppliers who provide support to domestic original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, that export automobiles or integrated systems to the United States would experience volumes of cutbacks. This will put pressure on production planning, employment decisions, and of course, investment choices. South African automobiles and components would see a direct rise in landed costs in the US market. And because of this, they would be unable to compete with goods from other nations that have continued preferential or zero duty access, such as those in the overall. The imposed tariff threatened to disrupt well-established trade flows and weaken the global competitiveness of South Africa's automotive manufacturers' ecosystem. However, South Africa remains resilient and steadfast in its effort to grow and protect our economy. We will continue to engage with the United States to identify practical solutions. The President will be sending once again a delegation to the White House to engage with the US administration on this matter. Ladies and gentlemen, despite challenging global and domestic economic circumstances, the automotive component sector continues to reaffirm its commitment to South Africa, attracting significant investments, driving innovation, thereby strengthening South Africa's manufacturing capabilities and global competitiveness. The recent investments in the Eastern Cape by Shutterproof, a part of PG Group, and Igbo Automotive Systems demonstrates that the South African market is resilient and capable of overcoming this setback. Igbo Automotive Systems is a locally owned Tier 1 producer of plastic injection molded components and assemblies with facilities in Nelson Mandela Bay and East London. Igbo is a triple BEE Level 4 company with an employee share ownership program, ESOP, benefiting over 200 employees. Compatriots, some of the future opportunities in this sector that we must take advantage of are localization and transformation. On localization, we can increase localization with existing and potential new original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, with their entrance to the markets and achieving possibly 5% growth in localization rate in South Africa, potentially resulting in 30 billion rands in new local procurement. Moreover, research has indicated that South Africa is well positioned to localize high-value new energy vehicles components, including fuel cells, thermal management systems, e-axle, and high-voltage battery mineral beneficiations and assembly. Regarding transformation, we can intensify the sector's potential to create at least 130 new black industrialists in components manufacturing as part of the Automotive Master Plan 2035 goals, 2035 rather, goals. We should integrate SMMEs into this sector, as Minister Ndabeni has emphasized this morning. And I want to assure you, Minister, we will not leave the SMME sector behind. I'm sure you are happy. At the heart of our vision for the automotive industry is a commitment to shared prosperity. We believe that sustainable development must benefit all members of our society, empowering individuals and communities to thrive and succeed. Our country boasts rich history of automotive innovation and a skilled workforce that is capable of competing at the global scale. As we look towards the future, we must capitalize on this potential to drive economic growth and create opportunities for all South Africans. Through creating inclusive business models and fostering a supportive environment for entrepreneurship, we can ensure that the benefits of industrial growth are shared equitably amongst all South Africans. As I conclude, Program Director, I want to say, as we navigate the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead, let us remember that our strength lies in our unity and collective vision for a brighter future. Together, we can build a future where prosperity is shared by all, leaving behind a legacy of growth and opportunities for generations to come. Let me end by wishing all our mothers and sisters a happy Women's Month that we are celebrating. And I want to say, Watinta Bafazi. Malibongwe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, you mustn't leave. If I can ask you to remain on stage, please, as I invite now Renee, CEO of NAACAM, up to do an official vote of thanks. So thank you very much for having joined us this morning, and I will leave you in Renee's capable hands.